Okay, so I'm here today for Latin Business Today with Tom Laidlaw. We'll get into Tom's background in a second, but Latin Business Today is a multi-platform trusted advisor network serving all types of businesses, including startups, small business owners, and business executives. It reaches nearly 1 million viewers, entrepreneurs, and business executives throughout the U.S. And today we're here on the Talking Sports Business with Dave Torromeo channel with somebody I've gotten to be very friendly with, a great guy. He's done a lot of stuff for us at Manhattanville College in our program there. He's just a genuinely good guy, and unfortunately, he played for the Rangers, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, despite our differences there, you being an Islander fan, we still get along. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you almost make me feel bad that I rooted against you, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I have to say. Hockey guys are generally, they seem to be good people, a lot of friendly and fun people I've met over the years in college athletics, and the hockey guys always seem to be good dudes. So you would fall in that category. Let's start, Tom. Why don't we start at the beginning, as they say, your background, where you grew up, went to college, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I grew up on a small dairy farm just outside of Toronto, a town called Brampton, Ontario. And, I talk about a lot how important that upbringing was for me because it was that dairy farm. We couldn't afford to hire other people to work. So it was my father and grandfather. They'd get up every day, milk the cows twice a day. Again, we couldn't afford to buy new equipment all the time. So they maintained the equipment meticulously. And I say how lucky I was because I didn't realize it until later on in life. I really brought a lot of that mentality with me throughout my playing career and business career and personal life too, that kind of showing up every day and working hard. So I grew up on the farm. When I was like 18, I got a scholarship to go play hockey at Northern Michigan University. That was 1976. So the first year they had a hockey team there was the first year I went there. So I was fortunate. I got to be a 4-year captain, which most guys don't get an opportunity to do. So we started the program in 1976. By the time my senior year came around, we were ranked number 1 in the country and actually went to the championship game at Providence, Rhode Island. Unfortunately, lost to North Dakota. But it was still a great ride to take it from, really, I guess, the worst program in the country to the best in 4 years. And then after actually my sophomore year, I'd been drafted by the New York Rangers. So I finished my college career off. And then I started done college. I came to New York and started playing with the Rangers. Actually, they brought me in after my senior year was done to play in the playoffs with the New Haven Nighthawks, who are not there anymore. They've even torn down the building there now. And so I played the playoffs, and that was a great opportunity for me. It really gave me a feel of what the pro game was like. Came back in the next year at the training camp and made the Rangers and played for the Rangers for 7 years, and then got traded to Los Angeles. We had a good team there, but it was Los Angeles, and really nobody was that interested in hockey. It was a good following, but then I was very fortunate. Wayne Gretzky got traded there, I guess a year after I got traded there. And we became like a rock band. There was movie stars at all the games. It was the place to be. So again, I was so fortunate. I started off in a great city like New York, loved playing with the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, losing to your Islanders all the time, unfortunately, because they were in the middle of winning their Stanley Cups. And then when I got traded out to LA, and I now got to play with Wayne Gretzky, and how it just, the whole scene of it wasn't just Wayne and how he played, but it was everything that came with him. So that was fantastic. When I got done playing, I got into the agent business, represented hockey players for 22 years. 5 of those years I was with IMG, which was the largest management company in the world at that time. Mm-hmm. And then once I got done the agent business, I've gotten off into motivational speaking and doing podcasts and a book. I was fortunate to be on the TV show Survivor, season 39. And I have another small company too, where we do, because of our network of athletes, we're tied in with we have access to people that manage big funds, multi-billion-dollar funds. And we meet people that maybe are doing an oil deal or a real estate deal and need money for these deals. So we're kind of like matchmakers for those people. So that's a kind of a side business. It can be pretty lucrative, but it's one of those businesses too. It's kind of lumpy, you go for years without getting a deal done. But if you do get one deal done, it's a pretty big payday too. So, right. So that's me now. It's I live the whole discipline. My company is called True Grit Life. We get up at 3:30 every morning, eat all healthy foods, go for a march, 4 o'clock, lift weights. And it's funny, like I get more, like a lot of people I hear, it's tough for a lot of people during this quarantine time. They're not at a gym, they're down the dumps. But for me, it's, again, because I've gotten into this whole discipline motivational world, I actually think that I've gotten more out of it this time off. I've gotten an opportunity to, improve my workouts, my discipline, my concentrating more on my workouts. I have this thing called, putting your mind into the muscle. So when you're working out, you're totally focused.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been amazing because, again, it really helps me at home too, because there's nobody else around. So as much as it's just a tough time, obviously people have lost their lives with the, the virus and everything. I think, and I try to say to people, take this opportunity to get better. You've got this opportunity at home now where maybe you have more time to do things instead of just sitting around and feel sorry for yourself. It is tough, there's no question, but I found that I've got more out of this quarantine than maybe I would have in the previous 2 months.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'm actually cleaning the garage out, which is 30 years in the making. So when you have 30 years of junk and kids' toys, and you sit there every day and go, "Wow, I wish I could do that." Well, you're right. There's no excuse now. It's a small thing, but it's a win for me. So
it is true, right? I mean, that kind of stuff that you sit there and look at and you see it every day and you say, okay, sooner or later I've got to get to it, but you never do it, and then finally you do. Yeah, right. I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So let's go back first to the hockey career, the years with the Rangers, obviously, some good teams and some, you played for a coach, one of your coaches at least, who was fresh off of what we're celebrating the 40th year anniversary of this year, the winning of the gold medal in Lake Placid with the big win over the Russians. Obviously, that wasn't the gold medal game, but a guy from that team, Kenny Morrow, played for the Islanders and won 4 cups right after winning that gold medal. But you played for Herb Brooks. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, well, it was one of those experiences, not unlike, when I look back at growing up on the farm, you don't realize all the things you're learning from particularly my father and grandfather. It's later on in life, you kind of look back and go, wow, this is why I am the way I am, right? This is why I'm able to accomplish things or, make mistakes and recover. And Herb's the same way, when I coached him, there's times where, to be honest, I hated him. He just was like, he was always hard, always pushing you to get the most out of yourself. And you don't, as a young person, you don't always see that he's doing you a favor, right? Because all you see is the hard part. I tell a story. So Herb, I had my rookie year, then Herb came in to coach my second year with the Rangers. And Herb was really always prepared and always thinking ahead, planning and speeches and everything. And so we'd had our last practice before the regular season was going to start. And the next day was going to be Herb Brooks' first regular season game in the National Hockey League. So we're at our practice rink in Rye, New York at Rye Playland. And he pulls the whole team together at center ice. And he's giving a big speech about, Barry Beck, this is what I expect from you. You're the captain. You're a leader. Ron Greshner, you're our power play guy. Ron Duguay, you can fly up and down the ice. And then he gets to me near the end and he goes, Laidlaw, when you get the puck, give it to somebody else. You're not supposed to have it. And the guys were dying laughing because, I had a good rookie year. I had 30 points or whatever. And now I'm going to take another step forward. And he's basically saying to me, just get the puck to somebody else. So I was devastated at the time. But that was one of those things that you look back at in a strange kind of way in Herb's world. It was a compliment because he thought I was mentally tough enough to take it, right? That he was kind of using me as an example. Knowing that maybe I wouldn't get it right away, but eventually it paid off. And it was, the way he treated me too, he never, he would really get to understand each player and he would treat them all differently. He wouldn't just come in and say, okay, this is the way I coach. He would understand each guy and what really gets him going. So for me, he knew from talking to other coaches and getting to know me, I wanted to have that role, that I was, and I was fine. I didn't have to be the star player. And it's funny because he knew this before I did, right? He was able to figure it all out. And then my role was to be that defensive player. But it isn't just saying, okay, you're going to be the defensive player. It's really rewarding you for being that good defensive player at certain times during games. Right. So he would come down if we had a big game, let's say against the Islanders at Madison Square Garden, and we're winning 2-1 and it's 30 seconds to go and we need to kill a penalty. Some of those games you played on a playoff day, you're losing 10 pounds of water weight and you're beat up, Clark Gillies and Bob Nystrom, you're butting heads with those guys all game long. And he would come down to me, and you're tired, right? And you don't know if you got much left. And he would come down, literally kick me in the rear end and say, get the F out there, Mm-hmm. And I think back and it was kind of, other guys were like, what's all that about? But to me, like, he didn't ask me how I was,
Yeah.
because he didn't. All he knew was that I wanted to know that he wanted me out there doing the job. Didn't matter if I was 100% or 70%. He wanted me. So that's like how he kind of rewarded me for being that good defensive player. And when he would do that, like the adrenaline would pump through me, like, because I knew, okay, he doesn't care how I am. He just wants me on the ice no matter how I am.
Right.
So, like, that just got me fired up. So that's the kind of stuff that Herb would do. Like, he would have sayings like, passes come from the heart. And he would literally be meaning that in like in a practice setting where you're kind of throwing the puck, halfway. You're not going all out. And he would get down and he like squeeze the stick. He said, no, passes come from the heart, meaning you put your heart into it. Don't hope that it happens, make it happen. And again, it's another one of those things that, like, I really believe, yes, he meant it, the actual act of passing, but it's also how you lead your life too. Yeah. It's like, okay, don't hope that something is going to happen, make it happen. So that's the kind of stuff with Herb that, at the time when he's teaching you the stuff, you don't totally get it. And then later on in life, kind of like the light bulb goes off, oh, geez, that's what he's talking about, and how he, he kind of built me into, like, he played a huge role in building me what I am today.
It's very interesting. I've heard you tell that story before, and it just struck me. And if watching the movie, how they portrayed him in the movie, and how, remember when he had the roster, and they were appalled because it's like they had a whole week of tryouts, but he knew, he said, I know my team. And that, what you're saying is exactly, he knew the type of guys he wanted. He knew their backgrounds. He knew, the work ethic, and for lack of a better word, and that's what you had. So he probably knew your background as, as a farmer, a farm boy, whatever the term is, and he knew you could handle it. So that's actually really kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. And that was Herb too. Like, that's one of the things I've learned from other people, but Herb was one of those first guys that I learned from. Like, his preparation was impeccable. Like, he would, so my first rookie year in the league, we didn't have a great regular season. Freddie Shero had gotten fired halfway through the year. Craig Patrick, who was Herb's assistant coach, because of his background and his family's background with the Rangers, we basically handed him the whole team, coach, general manager, and everything. But we just squeaked in the playoffs, and then had a long run in the playoffs. Went to the semifinals and lost to the Islanders on their way to win their second cup. So typically, when you do that well, you don't come in and change a lot of players. You usually keep the team together. But Herb was coming in, and we'd had a big, tough, physical team, and that wasn't Herb's game at all. So now Herb's coming into the team, getting rid of a lot of the big, tough, physical guys and bringing in smaller guys like Mark Pavlich or Robbie McClanahan and guys like the Ray Rutsalainen. They were like skaters, great players, but totally different than what we had. So you would think, most coaches would come in and the players would be like, what's going on here? We just almost won the Stanley Cup, and now you're changing the team. But when Herb came in the room, he was so prepared about what he was going to say, what the plan was for the year, how we were going to play, how each player was going to play, who was going to be in each role. And he would talk to us. And when you left the meeting, you're like, okay, I guess, instead of being like, what the heck happened to last year's team? You're like, okay, let's go. We're going to win the Stanley Cup here with this guy. Like, he really was that prepared. And, I'm sure maybe it's like, they talk about the duck sitting on the water, right? He's floating along. He looks like he's nice and cool and calm, but the feet are going 100 miles an hour underneath. And maybe Herb was like that inside. But man, his preparation and like the way he spoke to you, again, like, I really think he gave himself a license to be that confident and exude that confidence to everybody else, that he knew what he was doing. It wasn't a democracy. He wasn't asking for anybody's opinion. He was the dictator. He was going to do it his way. And you felt like, okay, this guy's got a plan.
So then the trade to the LA Kings, and by the way, you mentioned, the hockey wasn't that big, but I remember the LA Kings from when I was a kid watching them. They had a goalie by the name of Rogie Vachon. They had Marcel Dion, and then a guy by the name of Butch Goring, who, in my opinion, was the catalyst to the Islanders winning those cups. Because he was the key ingredient when he came to that team. But getting away from that, when your career ends, Tom, and you're, how long does it figure out, what's next, or is it kind of like a shock to the system? My hockey career, I've been doing this all my life, is now over, and now I have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, it was a strange time. I was like a lot of guys. We really didn't prepare ourselves, and we didn't make a lot of money back then either. So it's not like we had a huge nest sitting there to sit around for a couple of years and figure out what you want to do. And I remember, like, thinking back how naive I was too, because I'd hurt my back and I was at the end of my career. so I'd gone through like 2 or 3 years of having back problems. So when I did have 2 years left on my contract, and we spread that out over time, but really that wasn't much to live off. Especially seeing we spread it out over time. So like then when it finally ended for me, I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, it's over. Well, I should have said to myself, okay, this is finally it. I should have prepared for the 2 or 3 years that I knew it was coming to an end. So there's no time to sit around for me. I had a young family. We didn't, again, we had a little bit of an income coming in for the next 4 or 5 years, I think it was. And, but I had an agent friend of mine from New York, a guy by the name of Larry Roush, really nice gentleman. And at that time, there's really only like maybe 20 or 30 agents representing players. And he had spoken to me about being more of a recruiter for him. So I was in LA at the time. That's where we settled at first when I retired. So I flew out to New York, spent the weekend sitting around about what we were going to do, what are his philosophies. And I pretty much committed to him that I was going to work with him. But on the flight home, it's a long flight. You get 5 or 6 hours sitting in a plane. I started thinking to myself, like, why am I going to work for somebody else? I've got this, I was a captain or assistant captain of every team I ever played on. I won Players Award, Unsung Hero. I knew all these guys in the game, understood the game and the language and how people, the culture of the game. And I said, I just feel like I'm bringing so much to the table. Like he's going to be my boss. And he's a fantastic guy. But I thought, well, why am I going to have somebody else telling me what to do and taking a big chunk of the profits? So I got home. I said, I'm going to do it myself. And it's funny. I tell people too, it's like, I'm glad that I was smart enough to know what to do. But if I was any smarter, I would have scared myself to death, right? Because like, what do you do? You're starting a whole new business and you don't know. But again, I look, it's one of those things that when I speak to people in a motivational way, I say like, the people say, well, what was your plan B? Well, I said, well, plan B was finish plan A. It's the old saying, like, if you really want to, take the island in the battle, there's some war saying, if you really want to win the battle on the island, you burn the boats, right? So when you get to the island, you burn the boats. There's no way to get off the island. You've got to win that battle. And that was really the same way it was for me as an agent. I know it's kind of dramatic, but I had to pay the bills, right? I had a young family at home. So I transitioned right into the agent business. And I was, again, I keep going back to this, but that kind of true grit life growing up on the farm where, that work ethic is showing up. And it's the same way as an agent. I found it was just, I was getting all no's at first. I'm going out there trying to recruit players, and parents are saying to me, "Tom, we love you, but you've never negotiated a contract before. You've never represented a player." And I just kept going. And eventually you start getting your first player that's maybe a 9th round draft pick. And then he's playing on the team. And then you get a teammate of his that's a 4th round draft pick. And then that, 4th round draft pick becomes a 2nd round draft pick, and then a first. And I was very fortunate because when I was in LA and Wayne Gretzky was there, his agent, Mike Barnett, we'd gotten to know each other pretty good. And he was on his own just representing Mike, and then he got brought into IMG. So I would see him out on the road everywhere, and especially out in Western Canada. At that time, a lot of the agents didn't want to go out there because you're going out in the middle of winter to places like Moose Jaw, and Swift Current, and Swift, all these tiny little towns, and it's freezing. They would actually, when you go to places like Moose Jaw, you would actually have to leave your car running during the game. If you didn't leave the car running, it was going to freeze up. So all the cars in the parking lot and you go to the hotel, they give you an extension cord to the hotel because you could plug your car in to keep the engine warm during the winter. I rented a car the first time, a tiny little Mustang or something like that. I was driving from the Regina airport to Moose Jaw. I can't remember, it was an hour and a half drive or something. It was so cold that I would either have, and it was a smaller car, I would either have to keep the heat on my feet so they wouldn't freeze and let the windshield frost over, or then I'd have to switch and so I could see, I'd have to take the heat the other way. They wouldn't do both. Like, it wasn't strong enough to do both. So funny stories like that, it was a great experience. Eventually got to the point where I got hired by IMG, and that was, again, now I'm representing guys like Brian Berard was the first overall pick in the draft, was a client of mine. Got to the point where one year, I think I had just myself, it's 6 of the top 30 picks in the draft one year. And that was the year that Brian Berard got. So it really, because again, you start off similar to going to Northern Michigan, you start off being the worst team in the country. And then in your 4th year, you're the number 1 ranked team in the country. So same thing with me starting out as being an agent. I had no clients. And then, 4 or 5 years into it, now I've got all these top draft picks. So it was a great experience. Loved it. The recruiting got a little tougher. That's the main reason I got out of it. The recruiting when I recruited like a player like Berard, he was like 16 years old when I first met him.
Right.
Now, to get those top kids like a Brian Berard, you've got to start recruiting them when they're 13 or 14 years old. Just to me, that was kind of just wrong on a lot of levels. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going in front of a kid's locker room when he's 13, 14 years old, trying to represent him. So,
Yeah.
but it was blessed. So I loved the agent business. It was 22 years, some great experiences, some tough times that, like I didn't anticipate I would go through. You know, I had a player that came to me at one point who had been an NHL player who had been sexually abused by his junior coach. He was now, as part of his healing thing, he was coming out with that whole thing. That was a huge story up in Canada. You know, and I remember when he first told me, you know, I'm a farm boy from Canada. My experience with like sexual abuse was just like, you know, I was lucky to just not say too much and say, listen, I'm here with you. Yeah. And we'll get through it. And the NHL and the NHLPA were fantastic. They had put together a program with doctors to deal with, you know, substance abuse and all these different kind of issues, including me. So they really took the lead on that. You know, Brian Berard went through, he had a horrific eye injury and almost pretty much lost the vision in his eye, had to go through all that stuff. So things that you didn't anticipate that you're going to have to go through, that real learning experiences, you know, both from the legal side, from the personal side. So it was a good experience.
You know, you were kind enough to, we had our class this past semester from Manhattanville College, the sport business management program. And we had a class specifically about agents, role of an agent. And we had you on and heard a lot of those stories. And it was, you were kind enough to do that. And we appreciate that. Would like to say, so last year, you participated in a TV show that's been around for a long time, Survivor. I think, am I correct? You were the oldest contestant ever on the show?
Well, not ever. I was the oldest contestant I think they'd had in the last 10 years.
Oh, okay. How did that happen? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So like, I tell you, this whole process for me, like this, so my company being True Grit Life and writing the book and everything, like it's really, like part of my big thing that I see is to try to get better all the time. Like, and don't ever sit there and say, well, I'm too old or I'm too heavy or wrong skin color to do whatever your dream or your passion is. What first happened was, I think it's Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer, owns a piece. I believe I'm correct in this, Amazing Race and Survivor and Big Brother and all that. So he had approached the NHL. He's a big hockey fan. In fact, I think he's going to be a part owner in Seattle, the team there. He had approached the NHL about just getting two former NHL players that were, you know, same age, they were friends, and getting them on Amazing Race. So they didn't just approach me. They were asking a lot of guys, but they knew I was really in this conditioning thing and everything. So they came to me, and I get in trouble when I say this, but there's nobody else my age is shape to do it. You know? So, or else they didn't have a passport, which you needed a U.S. passport. So they didn't work out with Amazing Race. So then they mentioned about, actually we came back at it again. Well, what about Survivor? Just kind of more throwing a line in the water, like seeing, you know, and when I really looked at Survivor, I watched the game and I go, geez, I want to do this. Like when I do my speaking and everything, like I talk about discipline and devotion and dedication. When you talk about Survivor, it's all backstabbing and no integrity and everything. So I really wasn't too thrilled about it. But then I talked to some more people I respected a lot. And it came to the realization that this would be a great opportunity as another showing people that, listen, just like, you don't just talk, Tom, about saying, just do whatever you want to do. Don't let something hold you back. You know, you go do it, right? Yeah. So I said, okay. So we had to put together a tape, an audition tape to start with. And then if they like that, then they get on the phone with you. And, you know, some of the producers were big hockey fans and everything. So it helped there. And then when I went out then they bring you out to LA for casting. And, you know, you got a lot of young kids that are trying to get there. They're really nervous, you know, like they're huge Survivor fans. So when they go to sit in front of Jeff Probst and say the host, they're really nervous, you know, they're uptight and everything. So I walked in, I'm 60 years old. I don't care. You know, I've been so lucky, right? Because I'm around guys like Wayne Gretzky and Phil Esposito and, you know, done TV work and all those kinds of stuff. So, you know, in front of Jeff, I had huge respect for Jeff, and he's a great guy, but it's not like I'm going to be intimidated by him. So I walk in and, you know, he's a tiny little guy sitting on the couch and I'm just towering over him. I'm going like, yo, you're mine now. You're going to be called Proby from now on, all this kind of stuff. And the casting director, like he had told us, he prepped us all, like, you know, like be yourself, let your personality goes. And so he's sitting in the background going, well, like he was all fired up because I was giving it to him good. And at one point he turned to these two women from CBS were in the room, and he turned to the two women and they said, well, what do you think of him? And the one woman goes, it's very polite and ladylike and everything. He goes, you know, I like him. He's confident, but he's not cocky, you know? And the other woman turns and goes, oh no, he's totally cocky. He's 100%, which is kind of what you want, right? I mean, you're pouring it on. So it was a blast. It was, but it was weird stuff like you, when they bring you for casting, you're there for 5 days and you're in the hotel and it's there's like 19 other potential players in the game. And they don't want you to have any interaction with those people except in front of the camera. So for 5 days, you're in the same hotel, sit at the same restaurant. You've got to sit at different tables. You can't talk to each other the whole time. So it's kind of weird. And then they do that and they kind of trick you a little bit. Like, we'll be back to you in a couple of weeks, we'll let you know the results. It went for months before they got back to you.
Oh, wow.
And finally, And then finally, I think they want to keep it a secret who's on the show as long as possible. So they finally call and let me know that I was on the show. So it was good. But that time when they take you out to Fiji and drop you off on the island, it's kind of like, holy smokes, I'm actually doing this, right? So,
all right, I can imagine. So your agent background actually helped you a little bit when you were negotiating or whatever the term was for that, right?
Yes. Yeah, they knew I'd been an agent, obviously, and when they sent the contract, they even said to me, like I said, we know you're an agent, so obviously you're going to tear this up a little bit. So, it was a 125-page document, and they would do. They're pretty smart. Like they would put things like in the last, like second to last page, they would throw in clauses just randomly that, like, Survivor would end up being your agent for the next 2 years. And I crossed it. In fact, the lawyer did was pretty funny. He, I would catch those things, and you could tell he was kind of getting a kick out of it because everybody else, all the other people, would just sign it as it was. We finally got to the point where I think he emailed me. He said, "Listen, this has been great." He says, "We can't go any farther. This is the farthest we've ever gone in a contract." And because most people haven't even tried to negotiate it. So probably my ego was getting more of a thrill out of it than anything.
That's classic. Would you do anything differently on the show?
Yeah, you know what? I've been asked that a lot. Like, I really believe that if you watch the winners, there's so many different ways to win the game, different styles of play. Like the gentleman that just won last night, this Tony guy, just totally is a great guy. He's a cop from New Jersey, but he just would backstab anybody. Like, he's a real family guy. But when it comes to the game of Survivor, he would say, "Listen, here's how I'm going to play. I'm going to backstab everybody." And he's won the game twice now. He's won $3 million doing it. But there's been other people that play a real a little bit more of a character game. Like, at some point, you've got to mislead people. Like, on a blind side, you've got to make people believe that you're going to vote off another person where you're really going to vote them off, right? So that's part of the game. That's part of the strategy of the game. But I really wanted to go out there and think to myself, okay, it really is a 1 in 20 chance to win. You could be, there's people that got voted off from around me, before me, whatever, that were great players and very easily could have won the game. So I thought, okay, at some point, if I'm going to get voted off, I want to be able to stand up and be really proud of how I played the game. That I didn't come across as some guy that didn't have integrity, or I wanted to come across as being that loyal guy that played with integrity, played the game hard though, treated people fairly. But it's, when you're kind of raised in Canada, this is my upbringing, that you treat everybody with respect. The people you're playing against, the people you're playing with, the coaches, parents, kids in school, everything. When it comes time to win a game, you're going to play a game. You play to win. And if you have to hurt somebody else to do it, you do it. It's kind of a rough way of looking at it. Yeah. So that's kind of the mentality I wanted to have. And I was lucky. I remember when I got voted off, I stood up and I told everybody, "Hey, listen, great to meet you. Go all out every day." Like, I kind of prepared a little bit of what I wanted to say, because I was one of 3 people that was potentially going to get voted off. So I walked away thinking, you know what, I wouldn't change too much. I played the way I wanted to play, and it was good.
Good for you. Let's talk a minute, and then we'll wrap this up in a couple minutes. But I'd like to get your thoughts on, obviously, the current situation as it applies to the sports world, maybe specifically hockey. Do you see it coming back? If so, how? When? Maybe? What are your thoughts? And if you were a player, how would you feel?
Yeah. Well, a few things. First of all, it's interesting. Baseball seems to be like front and center right now, and they've got their negotiations coming on, and there's a lot of back and forth. And one of the things I learned from the business side of sports too is that a lot of the stuff that's said publicly is negotiation. They're using the media and the fans to posture themselves and put pressure. So there's all the talk that in March at some point, the owners that came to the players and talked about this prorated thing based on the number of games that they actually played, and players agreed to that. And now the owners have come back, and you kind of see their point that revenues are not even where we thought they were going to be back in March when this thing all started. So now they wanted to have more of a 50-50 split. So in baseball's case, they have fought long and hard for many years over many negotiations to not give in to the owners, especially to any kind of a cap or anything like that. So I think people may think, well, this is a one-time situation, but it really isn't. Once you start to set a precedent, I've heard people say, well, you can sign a contract that says, well, this is just a one-time thing for this pandemic, but that doesn't matter. Now the owners will know what you're willing to capitulate to, what's the level you're willing to go to. So I really think the players, although they may look bad, because if there's no baseball, the people are going to try to pin it on the players, right? To say it's their fault. They weren't willing to give in. But you know what, though? That's the business side of it. It's I can see what they're doing. So I still think this is all posturing that they'll get something done. But there's going to have to be some middle ground someplace, and they all know where it's at. They're just working hard to try to do it. If I was playing, it's funny. One of the things they've talked about, especially in hockey and basketball, is that you would go to these neutral sites, and the players would be sequestered in a hotel, and that would be for months. So I think to myself, we get different groups of players, right? You get those young single guys that are saying, I don't care. I'm quarantined now anyway. So, I'll go back, I'll make money, I'll sit in a hotel. Right. But you get some older guy that's maybe played for 12 years. And now because they've made so much money, has probably got a pretty substantial amount of money put away for retirement. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't necessarily have to play. And he's got a young family, some other city. Now he's going to leave. So he's at home with his wife and children. And he's going to leave to go live in a hotel with his buddies and leave his wife and children behind in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, there's so many ways you can go. I mean, first of all, your heart, like, am I going to leave my children and my wife to go, and I don't need to play? Second of all, the wife's looking at you like thinking, what? Yeah. Who's going to pay for the divorce down the road, right? When she goes back, because she's going to want to kill him. So I think those kind of things kind of go. You don't think about that human side of it. And I've heard a few players come out. I think it was Devin Dubnyk the other day, and Mike Trout in baseball had said it. Like, they want me to go live in a hotel with my young family here. Yeah. So that's the part as a player you think to yourself. And that's going to be the tough thing too, because if you're going to go poll like in hockey's case, the Players Association, all the players in it, you're going to get a wide range. You're going to get those young guys to, no, I just don't play. I don't care. Yeah, sit in the hotel, have a few laughs with the guys. And then the older guys are going, it's just having a hard time with it. So
I don't think there's a perfect answer to anything in this. Obviously, we're all going through this crazy time. It's for all of us. It's something we've never experienced. Hopefully, we'll never experience again, and our kids and grandkids and whatever. So, tell us about your family, Tom. You have two sons, is it?
Yep, two sons. My son Shane is 29 years old. He's married to a fantastic woman. He just got a new job right before the pandemic started. He works for a cannabis company out of Toronto. Oh, wow. So he was going to be working from home anyways. And the cannabis business in Canada, I mean, it's legal, and they're nothing else to do but smoke pot up there. So they're doing great. So he's doing fantastic in his career. And then my youngest son, Cody, he's working for a real estate development company out of Greenwich, Connecticut, called Bell Point Capital. So he's really done well. It's funny, like in two different personalities. And your kids are probably the same, right? I mean, it's like two different. They both ended up being very successful, but two entirely different people altogether. Very proud of both my sons. Yeah.
No doubt. And how can people? What's the best way for them to connect to you? Your social media, or if they need to, follow you?
Definitely. You can follow me on Instagram, Real Tom Laidlaw. Instagram, it's Real Tom Laidlaw. On Facebook, it's Tom Laidlaw. And then you can go to my website, it's truegritlife.com. And we've got a lot of, another good thing, and it seems like you're the same way during this quarantine time, we're doing a lot more Facebook Live interviews. So we've got a whole series of interviews I do with Kevin Allen, who used to write with USA Today. Him and I do a podcast every Monday and Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning. One of the players from Survivor, this Elaine, who is just a tremendous character, very funny. Her and I do a show on Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock. And then every Thursday at 2 o'clock, we start a new show. We have former teammates Dave Maloney, Ron Duguay, and Ron Gresher all get on. And initially it was just, we were bored one day and we said, let's all get on and we'll do a Facebook Live. And it was funny. We had thousands of viewers on it. And they said, well, we got to do this some more. We've had Boomer Sierson on. Boomer's on one time. Kenny Albert was on. We got Steve Vickers, an old.
I remember Steve Vickers, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Vickers is coming out. So it's really just us. What we realized is the fans just really enjoy it's like we're sitting around the locker room. We call it in the box. So we're just sitting around the locker room telling old stories. Ron Duguay does his. He's down in Florida. He's sitting in his bedroom, so he's got the maid coming in and out every once in a while. Of course, she's some hot blonde. and he's got props and everything. And Dave Maloney's a little bit more of a serious guy. Ron Gressner can barely figure out how to turn the computer on, you know, so it's pretty funny. Like I'm supposed to be the host, and I'm trying to guide everybody the right direction, and it's like herding cats, you know, they're all going all over the place. But it's a lot of fun.
We'll definitely check that out. It's Tom, appreciate your time as always. You're a good guy, and hopefully we can get together soon and have a nice cold one.
I like that. Nice healthy salad too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, brother.
Good talking to you.
Appreciate it, Tom. Take care of yourself.